Hey everyone, welcome to episode 3 of The Grind. Now this week on the PS4 has been huge in terms of updates and new content for the game. Along with the two new classes, the Musa and the Dark Knight, we've also had access to a whole bunch of new events and world bosses. So Kzarka's been added to the game along with field bosses like Beg, Ep3 and Muskan that drop some of the best gear in the game. This means that everybody's been flocking to these and has really been trying to hit up on those drop chances. As you already know, the drop chances on Kzarka weapon boxes is incredibly low, and the same for things like Beg's gloves and Muskans, and that's why they're highly sought after. Pre-orders have started on the marketplace already, so if you haven't already put a pre-order up, you definitely need to go ahead and do that, because you want to get hold of these items as quickly as possible. I've only attended one Kzarka, and I did have with me my new lucky baby, which contributed to the fact that I actually picked up my weapon on the one and only attempt I've managed to make on Kzarka since the patch day. Now, because Alexander was born on the 4th, so bang on patch day, I wasn't able to play initially, and that's also why I didn't cover the patch notes in terms of a video like I normally would do. What I have been doing though is taking complete advantage of the current event that's going on, which is Discover Your Next Class. So if you aren't already aware of this, you've probably been getting these rewards for your main character being leveled up to around level 58 if you've managed to get that far, and these have given you some sharps, some hards and a whole bunch of money along with skill points, your sealed book of combat and also some other armor and weapon stones. Now the main portion of this event though that it's incredibly worth doing is this section here, which is Discover a New Class. So everybody in eXile and a whole bunch of other people on the servers are already taking advantage of this, because they've deleted all of their alts if they had the same class alts, and they've made one of every class. Now all you need to do to benefit from this is to level each and every class up to level 50. You'll get your hands on 11 million silver, 2 hards, 2 sharps and 10 of each blackstone, both weapon and armor. Now these rewards really do add up. They're huge if you're currently trying to push your gear to try, if you're looking to get back on curve and you've not been able to get hold of those materials. This is a guaranteed source. To get this, we've been taking full advantage though of using boosting groups. So essentially one person on a high level character has been in a group with 4 people's alts, taking them out to whatever grind spot they feel like doing, rotating that grind spot and leveling those characters. It takes on average around an hour to get each of these characters done, so pretty much everybody in the guild has worked through systematically and managed to get all 6 characters done in around the 6-hour mark. We've been taking advantage of doing guild quests at the same time, so popping a large guild quest, sending the person out there, they've been then grinding that quest at the same time as getting the experience for everybody else, and it's basically a win-win. We then switch off from the people that have been boosted and they use their main characters instead to boost the other person's alts, and we trade off like that so that we can get the gear that we want. This has allowed everybody in the guild to start pushing higher in terms of their items, so most people in the guild are now currently sat around duo or try. We do have a lot of new players to the game who weren't as quick to jump on this as others, but now that they've started to do this, they're also managing to catch up with their overall gear score. They're starting to get more familiar with the enhancing system and it's feeling a lot less punishing. This has also contributed to it being easier to snipe hards and sharps off the marketplace. Constantly having pre-orders up on both of these along with concentrated weapon and concentrated armor stones has yielded a large amount. This is something that you should always be looking to do when you're trying to progress your gear, because these materials are such a bottleneck, and one of the only ways to gather it being events or gathering itself, having pre-orders up there just on the off chance is something that you really don't want to let slip. Now also this week we also got access to Node Wars. We don't currently have Conquest, that is due to come at the end of this little pre-season, which is 3 weeks, that I guess they're using as a way to sort of iron out some of the issues with Node Wars and check for optimization, but currently Node Wars are active in the game. Now we have had the opportunity to go up against some of the other guilds on the server, things like Fairy Tail, Karma, Banished are all guilds that we've managed to fight throughout Node Wars. Personally, I haven't been able to be there. In fact, I wasn't able to be there when we lost against Karma. Now, I understand that there were a few issues that our guild members experienced. Things like not having an SSD really punished them on load times. This meant that by the time they were able to respawn and see their screen, they were already pretty much dead again from any push. The most disappointing thing currently for Node Wars is the fact that the base building just isn't complete. So when you come and check out this post and the patch notes that PA put out in relation to this, you'll see that they covered everything from building annexes, things like the barricades, the recovery centres, flame towers, hoachas, the flag factory as well, and wooden fence gates. None of this is currently in the game. None of this is currently available, which is a real shame. What it basically means is that all we're able to do is build our initial fort and surround it by barricades. If you come up against a guild that has bigger numbers than you and they get the advantage to push your base first, it's very hard to repel this. The bases don't have a lot of health, and essentially what happens is they just pin you to your spawn with no real defensible structures and no way to speed things up in terms of a defensive push. We experienced this firsthand against Karma, or at least the guild, or the guys in the guild experienced it without me there to shot call. Things went a little bit south, and admittedly we did lose to a bigger, better guild on the day. That's not to say that Karma is the biggest and baddest guild on the server. This was just the first initial node, we didn't have a full strength guild, and we don't have access to half of the tools that are needed to defend a push against a bigger guild. I firmly believe that if I was there myself, along with some of our more seasoned veteran players, some of the guys with more of the gear on par with the guys in Karma, and also the ability to defend pushes with flame towers, hoachas, the recovery centre, and being able to fully utilise everything that is part of Node and Conquest Wars, that the fight would have been a lot more drawn out and would have lasted a lot longer. Coincidentally, we noticed this when we came up against 3 guilds on Friday. We took 30 people to a tier 4 node on Friday at Glish Ruins. This was built up of guilds like Banished and Fairy Tale, I believe, along with a 3rd guild. The almost exact same thing happened to them that happened to us against Karma. We had the gear advantage, we looked to have the number advantage, and we basically rolled fort after fort after fort. We killed them in an open field fight. They respawned at their base, they were pinned there and just couldn't recover. There was no way due to the load times to load in quick enough as a whole to regroup. Now, I know that SSDs massively improve these load times and they are going to help. However, when it comes to a game like this where Siege Warfare is the bread and butter of the main endgame content, having the game not optimized to the point where if you don't have extra hardware attached to your console you're going to struggle is just not really fair. It's bad enough that there's a big discrepancy between the performance on the OG PlayStations and the PS4 Pros, but having to add an SSD to your console as well just to be able to compete seems a little bit overkill. I'd really like to see Peerless bring in a kind of a dumbed down or a potato mode, like it's often referred to, way of reducing graphics, which should help also reduce the load times. This will allow people that don't want to invest more in a more expensive console or the extra hardware to be able to compete on a much more even playing field. I'm really interested to see what people's opinions are of the nodes and the sieges currently, or the nodes because we don't have access to the sieges, and where you currently feel they fit in the game. Personally, I think they were introduced entirely too soon. They were introduced without being fully fleshed out, and it just feels like an absolute waste of time to be contesting these nodes. Big guilds with more numbers and more gear are just going to roll you continuously because it is very hard to defend your base. Ultimately, the defensive structures are there to help you stave off a prolonged attack and be able to recover, regroup, and then press out of your base. Again, using Karma reference, we were able to push them back. I've looked and talked to a couple of guys in the guild, watched some of the footage back, and I can see where we were able to push them back. We were able to break their lines completely. We were able to pretty much wipe them on 3, 4, maybe 5 occasions. However, as soon as they were able to push us into the base, it was pretty much all she wrote. It didn't help that the guild essentially spawned almost on top of us at the very start of the node war as well, which meant that before anybody was ready, they were already pushed into the base, and anybody that died on that initial push would struggle to then recover and would essentially not be able to enjoy the PvP for the rest of the node. Anyway, that's a little bit of a rant from me, but ultimately I'm looking forward to how this progresses. I am here on NA purely for the PvP side of things. We want it to be a major part of the Siege and the Node PvP server, or PvP side of the server. This is one of the reasons why we restricted the guild to a 50-man guild initially. We wanted to take those bigger fights where we are outnumbered. We wanted to look at trying to fight across multiple different areas, different tiers of nodes. We wanted to look at the whole alliance side of things, forming up with other guilds, looking at ways to break bigger guilds down and remove them from regions, and that is still the plan moving forwards. Ultimately though, with recruitment open, we are going to be pushing for a little bit bigger because the numbers differences are quite significant, and between having a 50-man guild and a 90-man guild competing, if that 90-man guild does manage to pull their whole roster, it's almost a foregone conclusion that you will lose even with defensive structures. Hopefully this all gets ironed out by the time Conquest comes out. I don't personally see myself enjoying Conquest if all we're going to be doing is placing forts and basically bum rushing people to see how quick you can take out their fort. In the current state of the game, all it would take to dethrone Karma from any one of their nodes would be for 2 or 3, probably only 2 guilds to group up and simultaneously attack the base. They wouldn't be able to stave off a push from multiple guilds, which would mean that they would very quickly be dethroned. Now that's not fair in its own right, because without the defensive structures, they're not going to be able to sit there for a long period of time. Given the defensive structures, I think that they would be in a position to quite easily and quite happily fight multiple guilds on multiple fronts, and the PvP would be a lot more enjoyable. That's going to be the end of my rant. It's going to be the end of episode 3 of The Grind. Ultimately, I did want to do this as a recap of what's been happening over the last week for me. As you're all aware, with the new baby, I haven't been playing as much at all. I wouldn't have it any other way though. It's been incredibly fun week. Completely exhausted. Don't know where I am 90% of the time. However, when I do manage to get onto the game, I have been looking to progress my gear as much as I can. But the only real increase to anything I've had is the Kzarka drop. It did drop. I did take it to try. Unfortunately, with the way that the current marketplace is as well, getting hold of memory fragments and just fixing things or looking to repair your gear and progress your gear is incredibly hard. I've raised this feedback multiple times, and I'd be interested to see where the GMs stand on what's happening with the central marketplace, because it just feels like it's completely out of whack. Things just aren't price adjusting the way that they should, and we're just not able to get hold of materials as we should to be able to repair the gear they've put into game. Overall, I think they're genuinely doing a terrible job when it comes to the PS4 game. They're trying to speed up the content, but they've done it in such a way that they've essentially destroyed a lot of this in early game. If you were quick enough to get hold of hards and sharps early on and get your gear to try, you're in a much stronger position than everybody else. And because of this, what you'll see is that the 4,500 pre-orders or the 4,500 Witches Earrings of Marks of Shadows that were on the marketplace have now been snapped up by people who are attempting try accessories, because that's the only way to go with their gear. They've currently got everything try, and accessories are so cheap and so easy to get hold of because there is nothing else available to them, that they're now spending all of their money on that. Beg's gloves for 95 million is an absolute steal, but nobody's going to list them for that price when we all know that they should be around 250 million. Memory fragments just aren't selling at 150,000 a piece, because why would they? Memory fragments are valued at around 1.5 to 2 million on most servers, Xbox and PC, both NA and EU regions. As a result, nobody's spending. They're all holding these materials in the hopes that the marketplace gets fixed, the prices adjust, and we can start to enjoy a genuine economy. That's it though for this video, guys. Hopefully there are updates coming this week. I'm looking forward to the next week and seeing what happens with the game, enjoying some node wars with the guild, having a laugh with everybody, and hopefully getting a little bit more playtime and some time to produce a lot more content for the channel. If you are new here, as always guys, please hit that subscribe button. We've hit that 6,000 mark. We've absolutely smashed it over the last 6 months. It's been a fantastic ride, and I'm really enjoying putting out the content. It's definitely something I'm looking to carry on doing, even with things changing in my life at the moment. Hopefully there will be a couple more videos this week in terms of guides and information, but there will definitely be Siege streams and Siege videos coming up shortly, along with the rest of this video series. And I'm also about to embark on a new Node Wars series, or a new Node series should I say, on how you can make money from the current marketplace, how you can look to set up your nodes for future investments, and also how you can set up an empire that's basically just going to bring you in money when you can't play the game. As I'm sure you can understand, that's something that I'm progressively sort of leaning towards doing over the grinding, because I just don't have the time to play the game like I'd like to. So those are all things to look forward to. Anyway guys, I'll catch you in the next video, and thanks for watching.